If you've ever walked on the streets of Seoul, one of the first things you'll notice, other than how well dressed everyone is surprisingly how shiny and healthy everyone's hair is. Compare that to when you walk the streets of New York, downtown Chicago, or any other major city in the US. It just seems like the majority of people you come across have dry, thin hair, or are just outright balding. So what's the difference? Well, the real answer is not what you think. You probably think I'm going to start talking about all the different kinds of Korean hair care products and procedures, but in reality those have almost nothing to do with it. Instead, I'll share the 3 real reasons why Korean people are able to have flawless hair. The first and most important reason is that Korean people maintain a healthy gut microbiome. Kimchi is Korea's national food, and for good reason. Most of us eat this fermented cabbage dish several times a week, if not every day. It's served as a side dish at every Korean restaurant you go to, and you can have as much of it as you want for free. Well, assuming you've paid for the cost of your meal.
I'm not paying for this.
Now, due to the unique fermentation process, kimchi contains tons of good bacteria. In fact, it contains almost 4 times as many CFUs, or colony-forming units, as yogurt. And the reason why this is important is because your gut microbiome plays an essential role in virtually every function of your body. It's unfortunately a poorly understood subject, but new studies are being published every day connecting an unhealthy gut microbiome to any number of diseases and conditions. On the flip side, when you have a healthy gut microbiome, your body becomes much more effective at absorbing any kind of exogenous nutrients and also becomes better at regulating insulin and insulin sensitivity. And these 2 things are critical for healthy hair. Many people with hair loss actually have a number of nutrient deficiencies. Some common ones are iron deficiency, vitamin B7 deficiency, and vitamin D deficiency. Now, you might be consuming foods that are plentiful in all of these, but if you're not absorbing them properly, then they're not actually being used. Studies also show that a healthy gut microbiome helps to promote insulin sensitivity. The reason that's important is that if you consume a high carb / high sugar diet like most of us do,
Talking about me?
it's likely you're eventually going to develop some degree of insulin resistance, meaning your body becomes worse at collecting the sugar in your bloodstream and transporting it to the cells and tissues that really need it. When this happens, your body thinks there's something wrong and triggers an inflammatory response. That's why oftentimes you'll see people with diabetes have pain in random areas of their body, like their knees or lower back or feet. And when you have inflammation, one of the first places it'll show up are areas with lots of androgen receptors like your scalp and face. So in other words, if you have persistent skin or scalp conditions like acne, dandruff, dermatitis, eczema, or even just dry and red scalp, it's likely your gut microbiome is suboptimal and you could probably benefit from eating more probiotic foods or taking a probiotic supplement. However, the problem with the vast majority of probiotic supplements is that they're completely useless because they're already dead by the time they reach your doorstep. So you need to keep a couple of things in mind when you're choosing a probiotic supplement. One is that it's formulated to be shelf stable. Now, every probiotic will survive better under refrigeration, but it needs to be stable enough to keep most of the bacteria alive even at room temperature. The second thing that's important is that it contains the right strains of bacteria at the right amounts. You want one that has at least 5 billion CFUs per dose, and you also want to look for one that contains a specific strain called L. reuteri. Now, this particular strain of bacteria was examined in a controlled study done on mice and has been shown to promote follicle development, prevent hair thinning, and significantly increase the number of hairs in the anagen or the growth stage of the hair cycle. So I've done a ton of research on this and tried many brands, and by far the best one has been the Hyperbiotics brand at 15 billion CFUs. I take this once a day, every morning, and I can say without a doubt that it has been more effective in promoting hair growth than anything else in my hair loss stack. So if you want to check this out, I have the link to that in the description below. The second reason Koreans have healthier hair than their Western counterparts is that they're exposed to fewer endocrine disruptors in everyday life. If you don't already know, most chronic hair loss is due to androgenetic alopecia, which is caused by sensitivity to a hormone called DHT or dihydrotestosterone. Now, this is important to note because if almost everything you interact with on a day-to-day basis is impacting your hormone levels, that's also going to have an impact on the health of your hair. Believe it or not, a lot of the products that we use here in the US, like different kinds of plastics, fragrances, detergents, preservatives, metals, pesticides, and cosmetics, are actually banned in countries like South Korea because they're deemed to be unsafe. On top of that, the US also consumes a lot more dairy products than South Korea does. And that by itself isn't necessarily the worst thing. But the issue is that a significant percentage of American dairy products come from cows injected with growth hormones that make them produce more milk. And because of these injections, milk from these cows contains elevated levels of insulin-like growth factor, or IGF-1, which studies show can induce production of the enzyme 5-alpha reductase, which converts testosterone to DHT. I'll tell you one thing, if you ever go to South Korea, please try the milk, and you'll realize it just tastes different. Now, I'm not saying it's different in a good way or a bad way, but there's something clearly different in the way milk and dairy products overall are produced in the US compared to other parts of the world. And the final reason Koreans are able to have and maintain healthier hair is because of the products they use. What? Now, before you go, wait a minute, I thought you said hair products were irrelevant. They are, but I'm not saying that Korean hair care products have some miracle ingredients that promote hair growth. I'm saying most of them don't contain harmful chemicals that can actually cause hair loss. See, the way that you have to look at hair care products and most things that are topical is essentially pick the lesser of all the evils. Do not believe anyone that claims that some shampoo or conditioner or cream is going to regrow all your hair. I don't care if that person is the most famous dermatologist in the world, it's just not going to happen. And it's actually more likely to damage your follicles and hair. That being said, you do probably want to wash your hair at least once in a while, so the goal really is to do so in a way that is as minimally disruptive to your scalp microbiome as possible. Your scalp microbiome being, of course, the ecosystem of good and bad bacteria, fungi, and other microorganisms that exist on your scalp and create a protective barrier against the outside world. You see, most shampoos, conditioners, and soap products in the US contain what's called sulfates, and these are basically cheap chemicals that bind to oil and create a foaming effect that causes your shampoo or hand soap to lather. The problem is that these sulfates are extremely drying and irritating to the scalp, and when used over long periods of time can cause conditions such as dermatitis or dandruff that can indirectly trigger hair loss. So as you can see, it's not that Koreans are all super knowledgeable about all of this stuff and that they're hiding these secrets from the rest of the world.
You'll never know.
It's that these things are already embedded into their daily lives. Kimchi is just part of our culture, and we enjoy it as a side dish to pretty much anything because it just helps to add a fresh, springy element to any dish, especially a greasy one. The South Korean government has already taken many of the right steps to ban dangerous endocrine disruptors so they don't cause lasting damage to people and the environment. And as far as hair products, Koreans more or less all shop at the same or similar places. So for hair products, most people go to a store called Olive Young, which you'll find on literally every street corner in Korea, and they'll just buy whatever is on the shelf there. And I check those products personally, and most of them contain mild ingredients and most importantly are free of sulfates. Unlike here in the US, you don't have to specialty order products online or be knowledgeable about ingredients and read every little detail on an ingredient label. You just use what everyone else uses and it's usually fine. Alright, that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you learned something from this video, and if you did, I'd really appreciate if you could subscribe and thumbs up the video, as that'll impact the YouTube algorithm and allow me to reach a much broader audience of people suffering from hair loss. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.